Welcome back to Writing Done Right. Well, today we're going to do a video on writing tips, and what I want to talk about is 5 tips to finishing your draft. This is exciting for me because I just finished the first draft of a science fiction novel this last couple weeks, and I want to talk about the steps that I used to get my draft done in a very short period of time. So how short was that time for my first science fiction novel? And mind you, I usually write, Christian nonfiction. So a science fiction novel was a little out of my comfort zone. It actually took me about 3 months to write. Maybe it was 4 months. I forget, somewhere around that time period. But I also, though, finished, published, and produced, then published, a whole other book in the middle of time doing that. And I really have a very limited amount of time to write in any given day because I still have a regular day job I need to work on. So what steps do I use? I picked out 5 steps to finishing your draft in a reasonable period of time. So step number 1, you want to schedule your time. Get your time scheduled. Put it on the calendar. Know that from this time to this time, this given day, and for me, I actually spend about 1 hour. 1 hour a day is what I do 5 days a week. Sometimes Saturday, I'll do 2 hours on Saturday. Skip Sunday. So that way I'm getting between 5 and 6 hours. Every now and again, life gets in the way and I miss one. So at that time, I get about 5 or 6 hours a week on that. And actually, sometimes I do some evening writing as well. So it might be up to 8 or 10 hours in any given week as well. But with that, I schedule that time and I guard that time. I be careful with it. I'm not going to use that time to look around online. I'm not going to be poking around with my phone. I'm not going to be taking phone calls or doing text messaging and things like that. I'm really scheduling and guarding that time. Now, what do I do to do that? Well, that brings me to number 2. Find a place to write. When it's nice out, I live in central Pennsylvania, and when it's nice out, I go to parks. We have about 80 parks in this town, and I go out and I visit all those different parks, and sometimes I bring me a nice bagel. Sometimes I just bring a cup of coffee. I bring my computer, a notepad, I have a little laptop, which is a dedicated writing computer. It does nothing but that. There's no email applications. There's nothing else on there except what I use for writing. I take that little computer and I find a park bench and I sit there and I write for an hour. And I try out different parks around, get a different scenery. I find a place, and that completely separates me from the rest of my chaotic office where there's too many computers, there's too many devices, there's too many things going on that could possibly distract me from it. Now, what do I do in the wintertime? Well, I will either sit down at the kitchen table, which is a completely different environment for the rest of my work, or I'm going to go take a look at like a donut shop or something like that. Probably spend too much money, probably put on a few more of them winter pounds, but that's okay. I'll burn them all off in the summertime anyway. So I go ahead and do that. That way I'm completely separating myself out. Having that place to write is a very good thing to do. Now, number 3, and this kind of is part of this process, whether you're what is called a seater, you write by the seat of your pants, or if you are a plotter, you're plotting every detail, you still want to have a plan. No matter what, you want to have a basic gist of what's going on and maybe a basic idea of what's going on in that chapter. Now, for me, and I'll talk more about the seater versus plotter idea going on. I usually write nonfiction, which basically means you're doing a lot of plotting. You're doing a lot of plans. I'll talk about how I do all that later. For this, I actually had a lot of ideas out. I actually spoke them into a tape recorder and I listened back to those. I took some adequate notes. I basically laid out kind of a life history of the character involved in the story. I didn't actually get into every he did this, he did that, but I have a basic framework of, what's his house look like? What is the orientation of his house, which was important for part of the storyline? what is the, what's his birthday? What, even though the birth dates and stuff never showed up, I wanted to know that information. I want to know what grade he was in, what age he was. We're talking about a young man, high school age, is the central character in this novel. And so I have general ideas with a plan. Now, this could fit into either a seater or a plotter. It doesn't really matter which way you're sitting, but at the same token, I had some gist of where I'm going. That way I'm not sitting at my computer with a writer's block going, I don't know, what should I even do here? You want to have a little bit of an idea where the scene's going to go, and then just start writing, and then see what comes out of it. All right, step number 4, do not be concerned with your first draft, how it looks, the appearances, and all this kind of stuff. It is a first draft, or what I like to call a crap draft. It's ugly. It's full of spelling errors and grammar errors, and you're mixing a bunch of stuff out because you're typing faster than you can because you're thinking the story through, you're trying to get it down. Don't worry about it. Just go. Just keep going. Just keep going. Don't worry about it. Don't go back. Don't try and fix everything. Fix the big obvious things for sure. But don't spend so much time editing that your creative juices stop flowing. Get that draft out. Write. And then you go back through. You want to do a little bit of editing. Maybe you're reading it to a friend, a family member, somebody else. You're reading it and just do a couple quick little edits here and there. And then later you can print the whole thing out. You can do your own first pass edits, maybe second, third pass edit before you pass it over to an editor, whatever you're going to be doing there. But don't be a perfectionist about that first draft. Your first draft is about getting the story on paper so you don't forget it. It's about flowing with the creative juices as they flow out of you so you can have a good flowing story. You get caught up in the grammar when you're writing your first draft. You are going to have starts and stops, and it's going to feel a little bit more choppy than if it flows and you fix the stuff later. So that's my number 4. Number 5. Kind of tied into the number 3, but you want to keep some adequate notes. And what I mean here, and the reason I pulled this out as a separate item, is as I was writing, there were little details I wanted to know. What interactions do two characters have? What were the circumstances? What are the backstories of some of the side characters? Because they might come into play in a future sequel to the novel. What are some of the ideas and the principles and the practices? What are just some of the subtle nuances of the characters? All of these little things, keep good, accurate notes. Now, there's a lot of software tools that will give you these types of tips and strategies. In my case, I didn't use those. As much as I'm a technologist and I just do a lot of things with technology, I love me a notebook and a pen. I use notebooks and pens for my plotting. I use notebooks and pens for my ideas. I use notebooks and pens to map out all the directions and things I'm going. It's my preferred way of staying organized, particularly since I try and stay away from the computers as much as possible in my writing stuff, which is funny because I write on the computer, but you get the idea what I'm talking about. So those are my 5 tips that you want to have to get your novel finished in time, or whatever it is you're writing in time. It doesn't really matter. Step number 1, schedule your time. Tip number 2, find a place to write. Tip number 3, have a plan where you're going. So tip number 4, just keep moving through your draft. Don't worry about perfectionism. And tip number 5, keep notes on the fine details of the book. That's going to help you out tremendously. So hopefully this helped you in some tips to work on your draft, and I hope that you keep on pushing through your draft. Get that book done. Get it out there. We need more authors in this world. So thanks for coming along on this video where we will teach you how to get your writing done right.